Thank you, John. Thank you to ASAIM, U.S. Grains Council, for inviting me again to this wonderful and beautiful location. I know I'm enjoying myself so far. I hope everybody else is having that same opportunity. I've been asked to talk on this subject, is there a crisis in world commodity markets, and also try to address the question of will commodity prices go up or down. Well, I'm sorry to inform you at the onset that of course, nobody knows for sure where prices will go. I think as the Saudi oil minister said about the price of petroleum, where the price of oil goes, nobody knows. So I guess he's also quoting Yoda here. But the point is there a crisis? And I think the answer to that is yes and no. Interesting, very interesting that if we had this again a year ago, if we look back a year and a half ago, we had record high commodity prices, we had record high ocean freight and transportation prices, and so there was the question out in the world market of, can we feed the world? Is there going to be enough grain in the world to feed the world? And as someone said last night at dinner, don't we live in very interesting times? Because here we are just one short year hence, and we no longer wonder about that for the moment. There is ample food in the world. Everybody, and it's at considerably lower cost. So last year, when prices were at all-time highs, particularly delivered prices for grain, because of the increase in ocean freight costs, in addition to the increase in commodity prices, commodities were at an all-time high as far as costs go, and yet everybody was buying them. I travel around the world. Last year I was in 1 to 2 foreign countries per month, and as I went to different countries around the world, I asked world buyers, why are you still buying? We're trying to ration. The market is trying to ration consumption, and yet the world keeps buying. And I got the same answer. 1, we need it. 2, we can afford it, so we keep buying. This year, we get a different answer, of course. But let's look at the overall situation, and let's look at what risks face you in the audience this year. I'll try not to bother you or spend much time on detailed spreadsheets and flowcharts to let you know exactly what's happening, and I'd rather focus on the big picture. The big picture, the main issues that are important to this audience. One, when we look at the United States, what you will notice, and Tim, let's see if this, yeah, that's bright enough, I guess. The first thing, the top is in bushels, the bottom is in hectares, so it depends on what you like to look at. But if you look at the United States, the one important thing, take a look at what we plant. If you're looking at bushels, if you're looking at acres, we plant just under 300 million acres. Somewhere around 290, give or take. Or if you're looking at hectares, it's somewhere just under 120 million hectare of land. That's it. That's all the arable land we have to plant to the major crops. Corn, soybeans, wheat, hay, cotton, the major crops. So when people come and ask, well, in the United States, can you increase your production? Can you plant and increase production of corn? Yes, we can, but we have to take it away from some other commodity. Can you increase your production of soybeans? Yes, we can, but we have to take the land away from some other commodity. We only have that finite amount of space. So after you talk about 119, 120 million hectares, it becomes a game, or what we call the competition for acres. The competition for land and the battle for acres, which is what we're going through right now. USDA said, well, because of the ethanol industry, this is what's going to happen. This is a chart that's a couple of years old now, but I keep it to show the example of USDA says, well, because of ethanol, corn acres are going to increase, soybean acres are going to decrease, and this is going to continue for some period of time forward. That did not come true, as you'll see in subsequent slides. Corn initially took about 5 million acres away from soybeans. The following year, soybeans said, wait a minute, we want some of that land back, we need some of that land back. So that battle for acres took place and we saw a readjustment. Take a look at planted corn acres. This is the large jump we saw in 07 to 08. We went from all the way up to 93 million hectares. Excuse me, a million acres, almost 38 million hectare. But you'll see now that we've gone from 37.5, 34 this year. So corn has not been able to maintain or keep hold of all of that land. Yield trend. People say, can you in the United States increase your production of corn? We say yes. Because we have that finite amount of acreage, how must we therefore do it? The only way to increase corn production in a meaningful way, or soybean production, is to get a higher yield. Well, fortunately with GMO crops, we have seen yields on corn, yields on soybeans increasing. We have on corn back in the 2004-2005 growing season, we reached 10 tons per hectare equivalent. But you'll notice on this chart, statisticians and everybody reporting likes to say, well, look at that line. You just increase almost at a 40 or 45 degree angle every year, yields increase. Over time, yes, they do. However, that line, even though you got to this point, from this point, you didn't get there in a straight line. You got there in a very jagged line that is totally weather related. So in times of poor growing condition, weather-wise, look what can happen. Now we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of moderately good weather. The question really is, now what happens if we have one of these? What happens if we have that dip? That's the concern, and I think that's what this talk is going to take you, is times have been relatively good, but what happens if Mother Nature and weather are not cooperative? Corn production, therefore, has increased over time, but again, it's a jagged line. This year, estimates are about 307 million tons. We've been up as high as 330. We'll have to wait and see what the growing conditions are like this summer. Let's go from bushels to tons. A spreadsheet, it's in the chart, in the handout that you have. I think the only significant thing to draw from this is that, again, production has been increasing. If you look at this line, ethanol, those who want to talk about the ethanol industry, ethanol use on this line, 33, 40, 50, 76 million tons, 95 million tons, 104 million tons. Corn use to the ethanol industry. So yes, ethanol is growing, but when people say, and I give a presentation back at IGP, and they say, how do you read a USDA report? Or how do you read a spreadsheet like that? The simple answer is, like with many things in the financial world, go to the bottom line. So if you just simply go to the bottom line and say ending stocks, 53 million, almost 50 million, 33, 41, 40, 29 million tons. Ending stocks are declining. So in the world financial markets, and when we talk about price, the world only really wants to know the answer to one question. Next year, will supply of grain, at the end of the year, will we be left with more grain or less grain than we started with last year? That's the important factor. So if you go to the bottom line, you'll see that we're dropping to something close to 30 million tons of ending stocks, or about 9.3%. So we've been as high as almost 18, 20%. We're dropping to 9%. What does that mean? That means we increase that nervousness factor in markets. That means that we have more volatility in price movement. This is how domestic use has been increasing over the years, largely, of course, the biggest sector, the yellow sector, being the ethanol industry.